In the dark edge of the galaxy, there floated a prison. Not just any prison, it was called the Black Ring, a place where the worst creatures in the universe were locked away. Killers of planets, monsters from other dimensions, time breakers. The Black Ring was surrounded by black holes, force fields, and laws of physics so strong that even light followed the rules. Nothing escaped. Nothing survived without permission. Everything was controlled. Everything had a rule. Inside this cold, in a perfect place, the guards were machines and aliens trained to follow every command. The walls were made of living metal that could change shape, and the air inside was controlled to keep prisoners weak. But then one day something arrived. Not a ship, not a creature, a man, a human. He floated toward the prison with no suit, no air, no protection. He wasn't supposed to be alive, but he was. He wasn't supposed to reach the prison, but he did. The scanners tried to scan him, but they exploded. The cameras tried to see him, but the screen showed static. The guards grabbed their weapons, but the weapons melted in their hands. Still, the man didn't attack, wearing old torn clothes, barefoot with a calm smile on his face. His skin looked burned, his hair was wild, and his eyes glowed faint blue. He laughed out loud, just a soft laugh, like he found everything funny. They called the warden. The warden was a being made of light and metal, a high-level AI fused with an ancient alien mind. Morwan disobeyed the warden. The warden spoke to the man. "Identify yourself." But the man said nothing. "We're in violation of universal law," the warden continued. The man tilted his head, smiled wider, and whispered, "Whose law?" Before the warden could respond, the prison shook. The unbreakable walls bent. Gravity inside flipped for 5 seconds. Time slowed, then jumped forward. Every prisoner screamed. Every system went red. The man stood still. Wasn't causing it, not with weapons, not with tech, but with his presence alone. It was like the universe around him was confused. A young alien guard named Zai watched from the upper hall. She had never seen a human before. They were supposed to be extinct, or at least broken. She zoomed in with her lens. She saw the man touch the wall gently. Where he touched, the metal cracked like glass. She blinked and the crack was gone. The wall healed, but it looked scared. She didn't know how a wall could be scared, but it felt that way. The man looked up. His eyes met Z's eyes even from across the prison. She gasped. He raised a finger to his lips as if to say she. Then he spoke not out loud, but inside her head. "This place is fake," he said. "This order is fake. You're more than you think." Zai stumbled back. No one could speak through thought, not past the shields. Not inside the ring. The prison was made to hold gods, demons, and things with no name. But this man didn't break the rules. He made the rules stop working. And as alarms screamed and systems failed, one thing became clear to every being inside. Something had entered the universe that didn't care about its rules. And it was laughing. The prison stayed in lockdown for 3 days. No new prisoners, no movement, no answers. The being, the human, was placed in the deepest cell, Cell 0, made for creatures that shouldn't exist. It was a place surrounded by anti-reality fields, time walls, and silent zones. Inside, nothing could move, nothing could think, nothing could be. But the man sat in the center, legs crossed, smiling. Not dead, not weak, just waiting. The Galactic Warden Council held emergency meetings. They were powerful beings, some born from stars, others made from pure code. One of them, a massive creature of shadow and sound, said, "He is a danger to the universal code." Another, a being made of numbers and time, said, "He is breaking the laws without effort. We must erase him." Right? But none of them knew how. Meanwhile, Zi couldn't stop thinking about him. She had scanned prisoners before. She had seen monsters rip reality. But this was different. He hadn't done anything violent. He hadn't spoken more than a few words. And yet, the rules around him melted like ice under a hot sun. She remembered the voice in her mind. "You're more than you think." No prisoner had ever spoken to her like that. No prisoner had ever looked at her like she mattered. She sneaked into the control room for Cell 0. The cameras showed. Nothing but static. The sensors were useless. But one old machine of forgotten biosensors still worked. Showed a simple reading. Human. But next to it, there was a strange note flashing in red. Unknown anomaly. Rule breaker class. Zay frowned. Rule breaker. She searched the prison's history. No one had ever been tagged with that title. Didn't exist in the database. She made a choice. She entered the access code and opened a small observation window into Cell 0. She expected chaos. Instead, she saw peace. The man looked up at her, calm as ever. His voice entered her mind again. They're afraid. Not of me. Of what I show them. She whispered. What are you? His smile grew. I'm human. Zai shook her head. Humans don't have this power. The man chuckled. That's because they followed too many rules for too long. Suddenly, the alarms blared again. Systems glitched. A time loop started in one hallway 3 seconds, repeating over and over. Another section of the prison floated upside down. A giant prisoner, locked for 800 years, vanished without a trace. All because the man had blinked. Just blinked. The council sent in a force of quantum enforcers machines that controlled the laws of physics. They entered Cell 0. Zai watched, breath held. Ptt. The machines raised their weapons. The man stood up slowly. Are you sure? He asked, voice soft. The enforcers fired gravity bolts at him. The energy stopped midair, twisted into a spiral, and then turned into birds. Birds made of light. They flew around the man and vanished. Zai gasped. So did the council. The man stepped forward. The walls opened for him, even though they weren't supposed to. He looked at the enforcers and said, You can't stop what's already free. And with that, he walked out of Cell 0. Zi whispered to herself. He didn't escape. The cell let him go. Across the prison, things stopped working. The rules that had kept order for 1,000 years were no longer trusted. The guards were afraid. The prisoners were quiet. And the man, the one they still didn't understand, was walking through the heart of the Black Ring, laughing like he belonged there. Far away from the prison, across the stars, the lawmakers gathered. They were not rulers by name, but everyone obeyed them. They were the ones who had written the rules of the universe, how gravity should behave, how time should flow, how life should begin and end. Some called them gods. Others called them the code keepers. They were feared, respected, never questioned. But now something had changed. K-Human was breaking their rules without lifting a finger. He's not following the universal order. One lawmaker said, their voice like thunder in a dream. He's changing it, another whispered, watching a live feed from the prison. The man had now walked through 7 sealed zones. Not a single door had stopped him. Not a single defense had worked. The lawmakers decided to face him directly. They entered the prison through a wormhole, stepping out in golden light. Everything around them bowed, even the walls. All guards and prisoners dropped to their knees, but not the man. He stood there, relaxed, with his hands behind his back and a quiet smile on his face. So, he said, you've come. You will answer, said the first lawmaker. What are you? I already told them, the man said calmly. I'm human. Impossible, said the second. Humans are bound to laws. You're not. That's your mistake, the man replied. You think humans follow rules? But we only pretend to. Until we're ready to break them. The lawmakers raised their hands. Reality bent around them. Time stopped. The air turned to glass. The man stood in frozen space, but his eyes moved. He laughed. Time snapped back like a rubber band. The lawmakers stepped back in shock. One of them screamed as their form flickered and changed into a tree, then into dust. Another started shaking, their voice turning into static. The man walked toward them step by step. You thought the universe was yours, he said. You thought the laws were unbreakable, but you forgot something simple. What? The final lawmaker asked, his body cracking under invisible pressure. The man stopped. You made rules based on control. We humans make rules based on choice. And I've made mine. A wave of energy pulsed from his body, not fire, not light, not sound. It was freedom. The prison shook to its core. the lawmakers. Disappeared. Not dead, not alive, just gone, as if the universe had deleted their files. Zi watched from the shadows. Her hands were shaking. She had never believed in gods, but now she had seen one's fall. The man the humans stood alone in the middle of it all, calm as ever. He looked at her again, still watching. He asked gently. She stepped forward slowly. "What are you really?" He turned his head slightly. "The result of everything you were afraid of. Evolution, chaos, hope." Zi felt something strange in her chest. Like her own rules were breaking inside her. Her body didn't hurt. Her mind didn't scream. But she felt awake for the first time. And behind them, the prison was changing. The walls were reshaping. Gravity shifted. Colors changed. Even time began to move differently. Because the man hadn't just broken the rules. He had shown the universe that they could be broken. The universe began to change. Slowly at first, then faster, like a machine spinning out of control. On distant planets, scientists stared at their instruments in horror. Why? Time was moving too fast on some worlds and too slow on others. Stars were spinning backward. Gravity fields collapsed. Some suns turned cold, while others exploded into colorless flame. The laws that had held everything together were crumbling, and no one knew why except the people in the Black Ring prison. The man walked through the halls like a quiet storm. The doors opened before he reached them. Walls moved out of his way. He never raised his hand, never gave an order. The universe simply responded to him like it remembered an old Command 1 written before the rules were made. Zi followed him, not as a guard anymore. She had turned off her armor. She had left her weapon behind. She just walked beside him, not knowing why, only that she had to. "Why is this happening?" she asked. Her voice shook. "Because this world is built on lies," the man said softly. "Someone decided how things should work. But they forgot that rules aren't truth. They're just agreements." "Agreements between who?" Zi asked. He smiled. "Not you, not me. Someone afraid of what we could become." Behind them, the prison started to collapse, not in destruction, but in design. The shape of the halls bent, as if space had become soft. Lights flickered in impossible colors. Some prisoners were gone, moved, erased, or maybe set free. Others knelt in their cells, whispering prayers to a human they had never met. The Black Ring was no longer a prison. It was becoming something else. A fleet of alien ships arrived in orbit, thousands of them. Great empires had sent their strongest weapons. Ships with planet-killing lasers, armies of robots, AI commanders made of pure thought. Their orders were simple. Destroy the prison, erase the man. The man looked up once and smiled. They still think this is about power. The sky above the prison cracked open not from weapons, but from choice. The laws of physics bent and twisted as the man raised his hand. The attacking ships fired everything they had, missiles, beams, black hole bombs. None of it reached the surface. Every weapon stopped midair and fell apart like dust in the wind. From the dust, birds formed. Again, light birds, firebirds. Birds made of time and song. They flew upward and danced among the fleets. The weapons turned into music. The ships turned into stone, and the fleets ran. Some vanished. Some just forgot why they had come at all. Zi stood beside him, watching in silence. "You didn't kill them. I didn't have to," he said. "They broke their own rules the moment they fired. All I did was remind the universe that it doesn't have to listen." Zi looked. At her hand, she opened and closed her fingers. The movement felt different now. Her body felt lighter. Her thoughts were louder. She looked at the man. "What's happening to me?" "You're remembering what you are," he said. "You're waking up." All around them, the structure of the universe continued to fall apart. Not in fear. It was like something hidden was being uncovered. Something older than the lawmakers. Older than the rules. Something wild. Human. Zi looked at the stars. Some were blinking like eyes. Some were moving in spirals, rewriting the sky. The man laughed quietly. Not cruelly, not loudly. just like someone who saw something beautiful that nobody else understood. And for the first time, Zai laughed too. The change was spreading faster now. Whole galaxies were shifting. Planets that were once locked in orbit started drifting into new paths. Moons melted into clouds of light. Black holes stopped pulling and instead began to glow like lanterns. The rules that had shaped reality for billions of years were no longer trusted. The universe wasn't breaking. It was becoming something new, something alive. And at the center of it all stood one man, one human. Word of him traveled like a virus. The lawmakers were gone. Their code, once written into the fabric of space, was now falling apart. Across the stars, hidden humans, those thought lost, forgotten or mixed into alien bloodlines, began to feel different. They woke up with new thoughts, new strength, strange dreams of fire and freedom. They felt something inside them unlocking. Some could move things without touching them. Some could speak without words. Others simply knew things they had never learned. The aliens called it the human virus. It was spreading fast, not through blood, but through belief. When one human awakened, others nearby followed. And even non-humans, those who had a trace of human DNA, began to change. Not all were happy. Some were terrified. The old empires began to fall. Governments collapsed. Machines stopped working because they were built on rules that no longer applied. Zai had changed too. Her eyes glowed softly in the dark. Her voice could calm storms. She no longer needed her armor. She no longer needed answers. She just followed him, the man who had started it all. Why humans? She asked one night as they stood on a hill that wasn't there yesterday.
Why not another species?
He looked up at the sky. Because humans were never finished. The others accepted their shape, their limits, but humans kept pushing. They questioned everything, even reality, even their own gods. And now, she asked, doubt. They remember what they were always meant to be. A group of alien leaders came to stop him one last time. They were the survivors of the great empires. Their ships were built from stolen stars. Their minds were protected by old rules, the last pieces of order in a falling world. They stood before the man with weapons and shields powered by logic itself. You are a threat to existence, one said. No, he answered. I'm a threat to your control. They attacked. The sky burned. The ground screamed. But it didn't matter. The weapons turned into dust before they reached him. Their shields broke like paper. The leaders screamed as their bodies changed, some into trees, some into birds, some into nothing at all. Zai didn't flinch. She watched with calm eyes. They'll keep trying, she said. The man nodded, till they realize. I'm not trying to destroy anything, I'm setting it free. And he walked on across the changing world. Mountains moved to clear his path. Rivers flowed upward. Time shifted around him, but he stayed the same. Wherever he stepped, others followed. Some human, some alien, all changed. The virus was no longer a threat. It was evolution. Not of flesh, but of thought. Not of power, but of possibility. And in every corner of space, the name began to spread. The human who laughed at the universe. Everything had changed. The universe was no longer made of rules. It was made of choice. The stars didn't move because of gravity anymore. They moved because someone wanted them to. Time didn't tick forward because it had to. It flowed where it was needed. Light didn't just shine, listened. And the man, the human, stood at the center of this new reality, silent and still. Across the galaxies, people waited. Some in fear, others in hope. The old empires were gone. The machines built on logic had crumbled. The maps of space were useless, but something better had been born, something wild, listening free. The universe was no longer following a plan. Written by the lawmakers, it was writing itself, moment by moment. Zai stood beside the man. She had changed more than she understood. Her body felt lighter. Her thoughts were sharp, bright, endless. She could see sound, hear emotion, taste time. But she wasn't scared. She looked at the man and asked the question everyone was waiting for. What now? He turned to her, smiling gently.
Oh.
We make the first real rule. He raised his hand and touched the sky above a planet, but the sky of everything. Space bent around his fingers. Stars paused. Galaxies leaned closer, and then he whispered the rule: be free. That was it. No long law, no complex code, just 2 words. But the moment he said them, the universe agreed. It shivered once, like a giant exhaling. The last pieces of the old system faded. Prisons, the chains, the limits all erased. Not forgotten, just no longer needed. And then the man vanished. No death, no light show. He simply stopped being there. One moment he stood beside Zai, the next the air shimmered, and he was gone. Some said he became part of the universe itself. Some believed he walked into a new one. Others believed he was never truly here to begin with. It's just an idea wearing a human shape. But no one forgot him. The galaxies changed, but they didn't fall into chaos. They found new paths. New rules, small, personal ones. Rules chosen by choice, not force. The people remembered the man's laugh, soft and calm, even when everything was falling apart. They remembered how he looked at the stars like they were just waiting to be touched. They built stories about him, statues, songs, legends. But none of them could truly explain what he had done. He had shown them that the universe was never a cage, it was a door, and now it was open. Some still feared he might return, that he would tear down the new worlds being built. Others prayed he would return because if the universe ever forgot how to laugh again, it might need someone to remind it. The one who laughed at the rules is the one who walked through laws like dust, the human, the first, and maybe the last. This story was designed to be 6 parts, and part 6 gave a powerful, complete ending. But if you want to expand it with a part 7, we can treat it as an epilogue, or aftermath, a continuation that explores what happens after the universe has been freed. Here's part 7, keeping the same simple style and suspenseful tone. Years passed, or maybe minutes. Time didn't work the same anymore. The universe had settled. The chaos became calm. The light learned to listen. Planets were born not through explosions, but through dreams. People shaped their worlds by thought, not by machines. It wasn't perfect. There were still mistakes, still pain, but now nothing was forced. And still, people wondered about him. They whispered his name without knowing what it was. Some called him the rule breaker. Others called him the laugh. Few believed he never existed, that he was just a myth that came alive when the universe needed it most. But Zai knew he was real. She had seen him, walked beside him, changed because of him now. She traveled between the stars. Not as a soldier, not as a guard, but as a messenger. She didn't wear armor. She wore light. And everywhere she went, she asked the same question. What rules are you still following? Some didn't understand. Others laughed. But a few paused, thought, and in that silence, something awakened. Something human. Zia wasn't the only one spreading the message. Across galaxies, new beings were rising. Children born without limits. Minds that could stretch across dimensions. Hands that could shape reality with a single touch. They weren't worshipped, weren't feared. They were free. It's just like he wanted. But something strange was happening. A ripple, a flicker in the stars. That the edge of the universe began to pulse like a heartbeat. A soft rhythm that wasn't there before. And some began to dream of a voice. Gentle, calm, familiar. Be free, I said. Zai stood on a mountain made of glass clouds, looking at a sky filled with stars shaped like spirals. She felt the pulse, heard the whisper, and for the first time in years, she smiled with tears in her eyes. He's not gone, she whispered, and she was right. Somewhere beyond the edge, where the laws of the old universe had never reached, something moved. Not a man, just a laugh, quiet, but coming closer. Because even in a free universe, sometimes people forget. They fall back into fear, to patterns, into cages made of their own thoughts. And when they do, he will return not to rule, not to fight, but to remind them that the universe has no rules, only possibilities, and he'll laugh all over again.